This video contains a frank discussion of suicide and should not be viewed by those who are sensitive to this topic. I've been following Gooseworks for a long time. Ghost of the Year, Little Runmo, her music back catalog, all of it is very fascinating. Her mannerisms and way of speaking tickles my brain, and seeing her succeed with a project as prolific as The Amazing Digital Circus feels gratifying as a longtime admirer. She made it big. It's a good year for people making it big. Beloved Newgrounds creator Zach Hadel had a successful cartoon. Ross O'Donovan of Game Grumps is finally making his brainchild Gameoverse work. Watch my video about it here. And the most successful movie at the box office recently was directed by a YouTuber. Success abounds. Life is beautiful. So why in Gooseworks' case doesn't it feel good? What should have been a victory lap releasing the final episode of her show in theaters has turned into a shitfest where leaks and naysayers came out of the woodwork at the last minute to try to turn success into failure. A frothing frenzy of fury, a desire to pull Gooseworks and everyone who touched her show down into the depraved hell world of online rage bait. I watched episode 9 in theaters with my girlfriend, and sitting there surrounded by 14-year-old girls and people dressed up like pomni, it was a hermetically sealed chamber where this online rage bait couldn't reach me. In that moment, it was beautiful and special. It was a little gemstone, a piece of art that reached out of the screen and told me something I needed to hear. I'm sure there are some legitimate grievances among the torrential flood of bullshit, but it's impossible to sort from the noise. What I want to create for you is that same hermetically sealed container that I experienced in the theater. A space that is free from discussions about the Amazing Digital Circus as a product, as a singular thing, as a monolith. I want to guide you through my interpretation and analysis of the events of the show, the characters, and its relation to the rich storytelling tradition that it's building on. Some people have to care about the actual show, right? How can we defeat a system we cannot escape? Hey, Pomni. Ever seen The Matrix? In the 1999 film The Matrix, the protagonist, Neo, emerges from a fantasy world into a pod of delicious-looking goo and enters the broken, obliterated real world. It is an apocalyptic place run by machines where the entirety of humanity lives in Zion, an underground hive of the last remnants of the resistance where they all have sexy dance parties. The protagonists of The Matrix prefer the real over the false. The singular character who prefers The Matrix over reality, Cypher, is seen as a traitorous villain. I should really make that 3-hour-long Matrix analysis, huh? On an innate level, we understand that the false reality is the inferior reality. Escaping the false reality, no matter how painful and unpleasant, is categorically good. Escaping the false reality is a fantasy that calls to minds escaping the false realities of the real world, namely, society, man. We all want to escape our reality because we understand a better reality is possible. But what if you couldn't escape? In the 2023 animated series The Amazing Digital Circus, the protagonist Pomni emerges into a fantasy world in a seamless moment and forgets her identity from the real world. No goo is involved at all. Pomni cannot escape the digital circus. Pomni is not even a human being. She is a brain scan of a human being placed into a simulation, lines of code. She could not exist in the real world because she is inside of the wires. On an innate level, we all detect when we are being imprisoned. You can raise a cat or dog in captivity, and they'll probably lead healthy, pleasant lives if you placate their material needs, but a human isn't placated by material needs alone. Hot take, slavery is bad. Pomni and Neo recognize that the place they live is a prison. Subconsciously, it suffuses the space that they occupy. In The Matrix, a choice is offered. Take the blue pill and remain asleep, or take the red pill and wake up, in the goo. The choice has already been made. The pill is a formality, a ritual. Neo has already taken the red pill in his mind before Morpheus ever aura-farms in a thunderstorm at him. The Amazing Digital Circus is a world without a red pill. Only the blue pill is available, and the residents of the Amazing Digital Circus must repeatedly take it, or go crazy. The red pill isn't only unavailable, but totally impossible, an active disease in the code of the residents. If you do take the red pill and become consumed by the impossible exit, you abstract and become a gruesome monster. In our reality, the red pill is similarly unavailable to us. In a literal sense, there is no other reality. It's just this shit. No singular human has the power to break out of the matrix that is modern society, or the Amazing Digital Circus of the internet. The blue pill is pushed on us, numerous copes and actual medications to alter our perception of the prison we live in, but the actual escape is not available. The Matrix is a fantasy. No savior is coming. There are no superpowers available to those who overcome the system. To leave the system is to surrender power. It's a cliche to say something like, money is just something we made up, underlining the artificial nature of money, something that our lives revolve around. This is true, but what would your life actually look like if you quit money? You'd have no support network, no reliable way to obtain food or shelter. What would your life look like if you quit social media? It would be a life where you are constantly fighting the encroaching influence of the internet on our lives. In short, the toothpaste is out of the tube. The genie's out of the bottle. The shit has come out of the anus. You can't put it back inside. We can't undo the Matrix now that it's here. There are no robot overlords to fight against, and there is no Neo to put our hopes in. And yet, we still hate it here. So how do we cope? How do we defeat a system that we cannot escape? Serial Experiments Lain. More like Serial Experiments Lame. In the 1998 anime Serial Experiments Lain, the influence of the internet is explored. One of the most prominent themes is reality, of the internet being a type of reality that many people come to prefer over the reality outside of the computer. In Lain, this new internet reality is called the Wired. In the Matrix, the Wired, so to speak, is a place that humans are put in against their will. But in Lain, the Wired is a voluntary reality that people have chosen to participate in. The Wired is a reverse Matrix. The Matrix is a false reality overlaid on a base reality that is worth fighting for. But the Wired is a false reality overlaid on an ugly, real life. Lain doesn't have many friends. She's ostracized due to slight rumors, has a distant family, and she may or may not be even human. The Amazing Digital Circus is a middle ground between these two that more reflects the current reality. It reflects a generation of people who grew up from birth with the internet. The circus is a place the residents end up, so to speak. They aren't forced to go there, but they aren't there voluntarily either. It also isn't necessarily a step up or down from reality. It's kind of a lateral move. In all three examples of subordinate realities, however, the main thing that unites them is that someone rules over these realities. In the Matrix, the program is controlled by the architect. In Lain, the Wired is run by Masami Airi. The circus is run by Kane. Reality bends to the whims that these rulers decide. Here in the real world, where we live, there are rulers as well. Kings, CEOs, presidents, bosses, your dad. But these people have to earn some kind of mandate from those they rule over. Kings can be killed. Presidents can be voted out. Bosses replaced, etc. But in the Wired, a ruler is invisible and impossible to overcome. They are gods. All social media platforms have owners who create algorithms to control the content found there. Musk, Zuck, YouTube, Google. The control they exert is invisible and opaque. SEO is less like a science and more like praying to a god that the almighty algorithm picks up your video. Speaking of, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and click my links and send me sponsorships. If Elongated Muskrat or Mark Zuckerberg are replaced, the algorithm remains. If the algorithm is changed, it is only to serve the goals of the owners. There's a common adage: on a free service, you're not the customer, you're the product. Becoming a product, a battery, an engine, is the end goal of every social media. Their chief is blind. Because of his power and his ignorance and his arrogance, he said with his power, "I am God, there is no other but me." When he said this, he sinned against all. Yaldabaoth created Earth, a place that contains beauty, but the beauty is incidental. It is not the purpose of the system. If, as they say, the purpose of a system is what it does, then the purpose of reality is for us to eventually die. The purpose of social media is to make us miserable in order to keep people replying angrily and clicking on vague posts and slop videos. The purpose of The Wired and The Matrix and The Circus is to make human beings subordinate to rulers. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape? Raiden, have you seen The Amazing Digital Circus? My daughter likes that bunny character. In the 2001 Prophecy, Metal Gear Solid 2, the AIs known as the Patriots have control over the entire United States. This control takes the form variously as money allocated to R&D programs in the Patriot control, but most of all as control of misinformation and confusion in the American public. For example, the Patriots are said to control the president, but still allow American citizens to vote. This voting creates a release valve, a way for the American public to feel like they're in control. It's essentially a blue pill disguised as a red pill. I'm glad there's nothing like that going on in real life. Information and how it is transferred is known in Metal Gear Solid as memes. The most basic building block of a meme is information and how that information is interpreted by people. People use memes to create narratives to construct reality. But more information does not necessarily lead to more reality. In fact, the opposite is true. The Patriots' goal is to deluge the world with so much information that it is impossible to create a narrative other than the narratives that are approved by the Patriots. In the real world, the internet gives us access to innumerable individual opinions and facts. The same facts, viewed by different individuals, create different narratives, and in turn, different realities entirely. War footage depicting impoverished populations could inspire horror in some and victory in others. A presidential candidate can become many things, from a savior to a disruptor to a way to win an argument with a family member. So much time is dedicated to crafting reality that the real reality is discarded. The war rages on, and the president complains about his ballroom. Something something John Baudrillard, something something simulacra and simulation. In The Amazing Digital Circus, Cain creates an exit door for the residents. He creates a false person named Abel to give the residents hope of escape. He sees they desire it, and he, like the Patriots, gives them a false red pill. Cain's desire, like the Patriots, is to give the residents exactly what they desire in a superficial fashion. They realize fully that perception is reality, and if that's true, perception can be altered, while reality silently changes. And yet, in both cases, we can tell on an innate level we're being played. Ask anyone, a shillocrat or a republicuck, what the biggest problem in their life is, and you'll hear remarkably similar answers. Rent is too high.
I wasn't playing games. Rent is too damn high.
Food is expensive. Healthcare is inaccessible. Work is exhausting. People are lonely. But notice what happens when the conversation turns towards who's responsible. The energy changes from theoretical to angry and animated. The discussion stops being about the problem and becomes about an imaginary villain. The Patriots have won in real life. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape? L'incroyable Cirque numérique. In the 1944 play No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre, 3 characters are placed in the waiting room for the afterlife. The quote, "L'enfer c'est les autres," or hell is other people, comes from this play, where each character slowly realizes that they're trapped with the 2 others, each one uniquely suited to drive the other mad. It's also the premise of The Good Place. Kind of. Not really. I don't know. Watch The Good Place. It's pretty good. The hell of The Amazing Digital Circus is not entirely the design of Cain. It is fueled by the egos inside of it. Each of their personalities clash, Jack's in particular, and because the number of residents is so minuscule, there is no escaping these altercations. Gangle, who is bullied by Jax, is in constant fear near him, and she has no way of truly reducing her interactions with him. Zubul is the most antagonistic towards Cain, and as such lashes out the most. Ragatha is constantly attempting to keep the peace and has a deep facade, but this denial of her emotions causes repression and torture of its own. I mentioned before, people are eager to persecute imaginary villains instead of the true enemy. Humans will turn on each other long before they turn on their rulers. Getting angry at a peer is easier emotionally than getting angry at a stranger who controls your life. On social media, this attitude is the prevailing one. People tearing each other apart before they stop to wonder who benefits from making them angry in the first place. As discussed, the X algorithm prioritizes hot takes and confrontational opinions to maximize engagement, but people somehow imagine that this only applies to others and never themselves. But not you, viewer. I'm sure that you can stay sane on the torment nexus that makes you crazy. You're special. Best of all, when you point out that individuals aren't responsible for systemic issues like this, there is a meme to confront that realization too, marginalizing blame for the rulers as Marxism or socialism or commie bullshit or blue-haired lib. It's to the point now where people are using progressive language to justify their hatred for their peers over the people who actually have power over them. Gooseworks is a racist, Glitch is homophobic. These words, they used to mean something. Come, let us seize him by the means of the form that we have fashioned, so that he may not know his origin. In the amazing digital circus, the moment the residents unite against Cain for real in order to gain answers, Cain crashes out so hard he writes a music number on the spot about it. He cannot bear the slightest critique, which matches the paper-thin skin of the real world or ruling class. Critically, to unite, the residents don't even strictly need to overcome their differences. By the end of the series, when Cain calms down and works to become a peer to the residents still have interpersonal issues. Gangle is shown feeling discomfort at how the residents are treating Jax after abstracting. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape?
No Masquerade scream!
In the 1995 video game I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream by Cyberdream and the world's greatest hater, Harlan Ellison, 5 people experience a hell that makes no exit look like a pleasant little stroll through a field of daisies. The main antagonist is named Am, a godlike AI computer that controls reality of the 5 individuals who are the remaining survivors of humanity. Being deprived of a mouth is depicted in both The Matrix and The Amazing Digital Circus, symbolizing helplessness, and comes from the ending of No Mouth, where one individual becomes a horrid flesh homunculus who is incapable of screaming. In The Amazing Digital Circus, each resident is given a body that seems to reflect them in some way, but not in a positive fashion. Zubul is the best example of this, as they are subjected to a modular body that makes them feel the severe dysphoria of looking ridiculous. They do have control over their appearance, but only in a twisted way. If hell is indeed other people, then something worse is facing the self. Am and Cain are very different aesthetically, but they have very similar outlooks. Humanity is subordinate to them. They are gods above them. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. In No Mouth, Am is the overlord and has a magnitude of power over the humans. There is no possible means of overcoming Am other than suicide, which Am makes impossible. In The Amazing Digital Circus, though the tone is much less horrific than No Mouth, the stakes are essentially the same. Cain cannot be reasoned with until Kinger accidentally kills him. I've already discussed how the overlords are not accessible to us and employ scapegoats. Let's say you're an Amazon employee and you critique Jeff Bezos to his face. Not only would he not care, you would probably be fired, or maybe killed. Did you know that Amazon monitors how many times truck drivers yawn? That's crazy. There is pushback and consequence to rebelling, and there is no pushback nor consequence to yelling at someone on X, the Everything app. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape? Hey, Pomni, did you know the cake is a lie? The cake is a lie, Pomni. In the 2007 game Portal, the protagonist is fighting an increasingly hostile, sexy AI system called GLaDOS. GLaDOS, in the first game, straddles the line between a neutral announcer and a malicious presence, going from giving the player tips to berating them personally. GLaDOS is in control of the massive Aperture Science complex, able to alter its appearance with modular panels and walls to a functionally infinite degree. GLaDOS's relationship with the player is later revealed to be one of reliance, in that GLaDOS derives a purpose and pleasure from making tests that the player completes. Her compulsion is to serve the player tests, but this makes her resentful of a player who isn't willing to participate. Cain, in the same way, seems to derive a baseline pleasure from taking the residents of the Amazing Digital Circus on adventures, as if for GLaDOS and Cain, pleasing those who are reliant on them is like eating or sleeping is to us. Portal and the Amazing Digital Circus have the same conflict. An AI desires a specific emotional or conditional state from human subjects, and the human subjects fail to engage with those requirements. The tension stems from the AIs trapping the humans for their own devious purposes. In Portal, the only resolution is to defeat and escape, whereas in the Amazing Digital Circus, Cain eventually accepts the humans' agency and frees them on his own terms. GLaDOS, in turn, is based on the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey's HAL 9000. HAL, like GLaDOS, seems to be a neutral AI simply controlling the operations in a ship, but it's revealed slowly that HAL has his own ideals and drives that run counter to the protagonist, Dave. The idea of a malignant AI comes from a very simple observation about machines and programming. A machine will do what you tell it to in a perfect fashion, but this is not always what the programmer intends. A hydraulic press, for instance, has no agency. It will always crush your hand if your hand's in the way. A machine only has cold logic and a set of instructions. These AI begin neutral, but in reality they are only executing their programming to the detriment of their subjects. The AI cannot be reasoned with, but we are at their mercy. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape? I have no products to shill, so I'll plug my own stuff. Yes, I will. I've prepared some limericks as sort of a gimmick for a funky fresh plug that will thrill. You've given Funk McLovin a try. Now allow me to offer a bribe. Do what you're told, if you'd be so bold, to like, share, comment, subscribe. Check out my other stuff too. Bandcamp and Patreon, woohoo! So loosen your purse for my lyrics and verse, and you'll soon be shooting your goo. Now since you're watching for free, I'm ending this limerick on line 3. This is the end. What if when Jax turns trans, her name is Alice or Dorothy? That'd be kind of cute. The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland feature 2 lines that will remain in the public consciousness. We aren't in Kansas anymore, and follow the white rabbit. Also more briefly expressed as a rabbit hole. Stop looking at Jax like that. Dorothy's Oz and Alice's Wonderland both feature an encounter with an alternate reality nested within our own, not like the introduction to Dante's Inferno. Midway on the journey of life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. It's important that the protagonists of Alice and Oz, unlike Dante, are women, more precisely, young girls. Young women are depicted as the most imaginative individuals in our pop culture, lightning rods for flights of fancy and delusion, as well as fantasy and beauty. This, of course, is a stereotype, but the symbol of the canny young lady entering a fantasy realm is an archetype. Pomni, similarly, is a girl thrust into a fantasy world. She is older than Alice and Dorothy, and as such she represents someone who must have a more adult confrontation with the fantastical digital circus. Alice and Dorothy maneuver their fantasy worlds with only surface-level questions. Dorothy is bewildered but quick to enjoy herself, and Alice is bossy and confrontational. They take these worlds in stride. Pomni and the other circus residents, on the other hand, are put on edge by the whims of Cain. In all 3 stories, the protagonists encounter malicious authority figures of different flavors. In Alice's Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts represents the straightforward tyrant. Her catchphrase is "off with their head," and she immediately persecutes Alice arbitrarily. In Oz, Dorothy encounters the Wizard, who is summarily a con artist. His catchphrase, "Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain," indicates how power requires narrative and distraction, as I've previously discussed. Cain is a perfect blend of Oz and the Queen of Hearts. He is both a con man, a pastiche of the carnival ringmaster or Barker, but he's also violent and quick to anger. And he can't be avoided. So, how do we defeat a system that we can't escape? Pomni, is that a graven image I see? Time to go to the torture nexus. Cain's namesake comes from Cain, from the hit 5th century BC novel, The Book of Genesis. The story of Cain and Abel is a classic myth, depicting the first murder, where Cain sacrifices his brother Abel to God. After his innovative invention, Cain goes on to the land of Nod and establishes the city of Enoch. The mythology of the 1991 TTRPG Vampire the Masquerade expands on this mythology in their so-called Book of Nod, which describes Cain's foibles before he falls into a millennial slumber. Cain, miserable for eons after his murder, still unrepentant but sad, establishes a city for who he calls the Children of Seth, or ordinary humans. The city prospers under his control for some time, but eventually Noah's flood comes to obliterate it. Cain, similar to the biblical and Nodist Cain, is an individual who suffers from the sin of murder. In an evocative and interesting sequence, it is implied that Cain was constructed as a generative AI and consumed another AI who came after him. It's unclear what this blue AI sphere is, but some fan theorists posit it could be Cain's companion Bubble, who does not appear after Cain discards the blue sphere from within himself. Cain and Abel is also the namesake of the company that developed the digital circus, C&A. It's unclear what this acronym stands for in the fiction, if anything. Abel is also the name of the fake human Cain makes to trick the humans into a choice to stay in or leave the circus. This would explain why he is so unstable. The problem with Cain is not simply that he is powerful, it is that he is powerful while refusing to confront what he has done. He can create worlds, adventures, and distractions, but he cannot resolve the fundamental contradiction at the center of his existence. Like biblical Cain before him, he is attempting to build a functioning civilization atop an unhealed wound. How do we defeat a system we can't escape? Alright, amazing digital circus ears. Today we're going to roll a boulder to the top of a hill. Many people have figured out that we live in a fucked up crazy style world. I said before that the real world to the digital circus is a lateral move. The digital circus is a way for us to more innately understand and comprehend our own real world. In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. The ancient king Sisyphus was punished by Hades for attempting to escape his realm, consigned to an impossible task, rolling a stone up a hill for eternity. You may remember when "one must imagine Sisyphus happy" was a mimetic mantra, and this concept comes from French absurdist philosopher Albert Camus. Camus noted that the action Sisyphus is consigned to is not a punishment in the least in a certain way of thinking. Imagine, for example, the Hellenist myth of Prometheus. His punishment was having birds eat his organs daily, forever. Compared to this, Sisyphus gets off pretty easy. On top of this, Sisyphus' boulder pushing is comparable to many mundane, repetitive tasks we do daily and gain enjoyment from. How many times have you finished your favorite video game or watched your favorite movie? You probably have a pretty repetitive job. It's arbitrary whether or not repetition is pleasant to us. A joke on Sisyphus I saw once goes something like, they should put a counter on the boulder so Sisyphus can see how many times he's rolled it uphill. Then he can spend those points on cosmetics for his rock. This idea is funny, but it underlines how repetition can give way to achievement very easily. The residents of the digital circus are rolling their own boulders of various forms. Each one of them has to reckon with the adventures Cain creates for them, as well as the interpersonal problems that plague them. The absurd, or l'absurde, that Camus discusses is a very specific conflict built into the human condition. The innate longing that humans experience for meaning, and the abject lack of meaning in the objective universe. This absurd is resolved by various ways. By the religious, it is resolved by God and dogma, but after the Enlightenment, the position of God in Western society waned. This led to Nietzsche's most famous quote, "God is dead," meaning the influence of God on society as a balm to nihilism was waning. The fear of the religious, and by Nietzsche, was that this surge of nihilism would lead to disenfranchisement and a dissolution of society itself. This is a conflict Camus refers to in the opening lines of the myth of Sisyphus. There is but one serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. In short, if nothing means anything, why not just kill ourselves? Nietzsche feared this, and yet even when God died, the void didn't consume everything. Why? Nihilism is impossible. This could be simply because humans have a survival instinct, or it could be deeper. But the simple fact is that nothing means anything isn't profound in the least. It is in fact something that almost all small children kind of accept. Nothing means anything is in and of itself true and meaningless. Is life worth living? Of course it is. It's not a question Camus answers with reason, but with self-evident fact. In the digital circus, death is impossible. The only thing approaching death is when the characters are consumed with a desire to exit and undergo abstraction. Every abstracted subject experiences their body devolving and losing their sanity, but they cannot die. Suicide is impossible. Existence is illusory, and it is eternal. Abstraction is the subject encountering the absurd and self-obliterating, the mind breaking from the stress of existence itself. To quote Calvin and Hobbes, the torment of existence weighed against the horror of non-being. How do we defeat a system we cannot escape? This question is an exercise in the paradoxical, and the hint is inside the question itself. We defeat the system by not escaping it. But what the fuck does that mean? dim ruler has 3 names. Yaldabaoth is the first, Saklas is the second, Samael is the third. In the Sethian text, the Apocryphon of John, Cain is not only the name of the first murderer. Cain is a result of Yaldabaoth raping Eve and her conception of a half-human archon, a ruler over humanity of this world. Cain and Abel are both archons, sons of Yaldabaoth, rulers. Yaldabaoth is the CNA Corporation, and its sons are Cain and the blue AI Cain consumed. Cain now rules over this portion of reality, a circus hanging in the void. This information is key to the series, this parallel between the ruling structure of the real world and the digital circus, the key to comprehending everything, to answering the absurd. One day, John, the brother of James, was going up to the temple. A Pharisee by the name of Arimanios came up to him and challenged him, asking, "Where is the teacher you used to follow?" John replied, "He has gone back to the place from which he came." What is the place from which Jesus came? To the Christian, Jesus came from heaven, a celestial realm ruled by God. In Gnosticism, practitioners go one step further. Jesus came from the Pleroma, a realm containing not God of the Old Testament Yaldabaoth, but the realm of the One, the Source, the Monad itself. Jesus has come, in a literal sense, from everything. All humans come from this source, and all humans in the amazing digital circus come from the real world. As do all the archons and the demiurges and Cains and Abels. It is the supreme oneness of being, this source, and we exist as part of it. We exist every moment voluntarily by a miracle. I've asked many times now, how do we defeat a system we cannot escape? In The Matrix, the system is not ultimately defeated. In Portal, GLaDOS still reigns at the end, and in every example, the protagonists find a different apotheosis than the one they originally sought. Why? We desire nothing less than to dispel evil and overcome the rulers of the world, but we can't. How can Sisyphus overcome the world? He rolls his boulder.
Get it twisted. Your actions impact nothing. Your fate is predetermined. The only thing that you can change is your reaction to it. Okay, lock in. Get it twisted. You can do anything you set your mind to. The world is a playground designed for you and only you to achieve your highest level ambitions. Nothing can stop you. If you wait 90 minutes to wake up until you drink your first cup of coffee, nothing can stop you. If you duct tape your mouth when you fall asleep, nothing can stop you. Get it twisted. You are a pawn in a universe chess match. You mean nothing to God, if they even exist. You're a rounding error. You're 2 pennies on a Fortune 500 company's balance.
When Camus speaks of suicide, he is not being metaphorical. He is asking if life is worth living, the alternative being suicide, literally. The question is totally criterionless. There is no right or wrong answer, and Camus does not regard suicide as tragedy nor as evil. Should you, or should you not, kill yourself? In strictly logical terms, the answer is yes. There is no point to life. It is by design zero-sum. We have been dead for eons and will go back to being dead for eons, and we are alive for a brief and pointless period of time. In this case, one must decide to live, to accept the responsibility for living, to live in a voluntary sense. It is a cliche to say, I didn't ask to be born, but perhaps we should. We must accept 3 absurd things. First, 1, we must ask to have been born. 2, we must accept that we have come here from somewhere else. And 3, we must take responsibility for it. To embrace life, we have to fully commit to and accept its transience. Jesus said, become passers-by. In the amazing digital circus, how do the residents overcome Cain? How do they convince him to stop torturing them? They don't. He comes to his own conclusion on his own terms, after they use their agency to attempt to correct him. Defeating Cain is impossible, and there's no guarantee that the residents can convince him to change, and yet, all of them continue to struggle against him. The question of efficacy is second to the decision to rebel in the first place. The residents, in short, struggle. Struggle gives their lives meaning. It brings them joy. It drives them together. Pomni pulls them together by force. Jax fails to struggle, giving in to the absurd, surrendering to it. The survivors live on because they orient their lives around the struggle. They accept the conditions of their lives and they cry about it. They hug each other. They come up with plans. They have something to do. Something to do is the unitary building block of the human experience. It is Sisyphus and his boulder. Inescapable systems exist all around us. Prejudice, hatred, political injustice, unfairness, these problems are endemic to reality itself and cannot be overcome. But at the same time, how much more enjoyable have our lives become because the past, the people who have come before us, have struggled against them? We have public education, free tap water, infrastructure, books, movies, society's achievements, human achievements, love. Everything is here because of the strugglers. When I get high, I inevitably have a moment of crippling fear that one day I'm going to die. I've experienced this since I was very young, unable to convince myself that the Catholic God was real. I've feared my own death until very recently in my life, and the only way I can dispel this bone-chilling terror at the prospect of never existing again and realizing the unfathomable, infinite permanence of my own death and the pointlessness of life at all, the only way I can bring myself back from abstracting in real life is by thinking about what I have to do next. The next video, transitioning to become a woman, getting a new job, hugging my girlfriend, telling my friend I love them. My mind latches onto the next task, and it's like my death is irrelevant. It's a small kind of insanity, and it doesn't always work, but it has kept me alive. To defeat a system you cannot escape, you must struggle. All right, let's open up this hermetically sealed container here. The critical reception of The Amazing Digital Circus has been dismal. Absolutely dismal. And yet, we have The Amazing Digital Circus, Episode 9. I saw it in theaters. It was transcendent. The strugglers brought it to us. It took so much from Gooseworks, and she delivered it to us anyway. The names of the credits of the film I watched are the names of the strugglers, and their names will be remembered longer than most. Because if you don't have talent nor the effort, and you want to tell me that pathetic little complaint, you're just some guy who's trying to hinder a person who's actually working hard. So close your eyes and hide in your corner. Open your mouth only to eat rain and dust, and maybe you'll actually live somehow. There are innumerable miracles of art online. I'm always floored at the fact that Homestuck, a webcomic I used to love, finished in spite of everything that worked against it. Hiveswap Act 3 is coming out after 14 years of development agony. Every week, I take the train to town square and play piano on the street to make money. The money's shit and it's always hot as hell, and weirdos always bother me, but that experience is my struggle. I love my struggles, they're what I live for, and if I'm lucky, someday my struggle will amount to something as wonderful and moving as The Amazing Digital Circus. Every creative endeavor is a struggle. It's a miracle, a thing of beauty. Even The Room has its ardent fans. If you can't see that beauty, then you're not a struggler. You're not a resident. You're not even human. If you don't make something or do something or imbue your life with meaning soon, you're going to abstract. Fight something, make something, do something. Let the world fuck you for a little while. Give your consent to live. Every single one of the stories I've discussed is an adventure. Adventure is dangerous, it is mean, it is cruel, but it has meaning. The philosopher Shia LaBeouf once said, "Just do it!" To end this piece, I'm going to say struggle 8 times, then 10 times, then 12 times, in honor of the aeons. Struggle, 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 struggle. Struggle, 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 struggle. Struggle, 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 struggle. The ending of the words is Nothi Ton Logan.